So, as you can see in the title slide, the title of my lecture today is just what is it that makes today's Polish illustrations not so different, so appealing. And what I would like to do during this lecture is to give you the opportunity to see the richness and the variety of Polish book illustration for children and young adults, actually in two periods. The one is associated with the so-called Polish School of Illustration of the decades of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. And the second period is today. So the most recent production in this area, and these two periods, these two scopes gave me the idea to compare them under some aspects, of course, only, because I see similarities, and this is probably why I used this word "not" in the brackets in the title of my lecture. I decided to rephrase the original title of Richard Hamilton's famous collage for two reasons. The first one is very simple. I've liked this long and partly rhetorical question since the very first time I heard it. The second one is related to the topic and to the lecture today, as Hamilton's work, which preceded and somehow proclaimed pop art, luckily coincided in time with the birth of the phenomenon known as Polish School of Illustration. The year 1956 was the beginning of a period known in Polish history as the thaw, when the wind of political changes blew through the country, remaining after the Second World War under the supervision and a strong influence of the Soviets. Nevertheless, high-quality artistic education, based on long-term tradition, managed to develop, especially at the Warsaw Academy of Fine Arts, which established the book and illustration studio run by Jan Marcin Szancer as early as in 1951. Other circumstances deriving from the socialist worldview paradoxically positively influenced condition of Polish illustration for children. These were, among others, strong state patronage, central management of culture, slogans about children perceived as future of the nation. Hence, the young audience was provided with constant supplies of books aimed at different age groups, from the youngest, kindergarten children, to teenagers searching for the knowledge about the world and the universe. All this resulted in impressive numbers of produced books and hundreds of artists involved in the art of illustration, as it was a reliable source of income. Similarly to designing press illustrations, posters, postcards, stamps, adverts, and many other prints. Luckily enough, all of the publishing houses employed art directors, active artists themselves, who were responsible for aesthetic quality of the book production. Many of the illustrators active in the period 1955-1975, thanks to their versatile experience in many graphic design areas, benefited from this variety, and Polish illustration for children escape naivety and fawning over the young audience. Humor, metaphors, mental shortcuts, modern art language, bold typography, following style trends like, for example, New Look, Cubism, Expressionism, Neo-Secession, Hyperrealism, pop art, all can be easily found in Polish illustration designed for children. The artist's professional experience was manifold, gained in cartoon and comic drawing, architectural drawing, cartoon and animated films, stage, cinema and TV design, puppets and costume design, exhibition architecture and design on the one hand, and on the other, the activity in the so-called pure art disciplines such as painting, drawing, printmaking, woodcuts, lino cuts and etchings, for example, even sculpture and textiles. This background provided original approaches to book illustration and book design, sometimes, as in the example of Bogdan Butenko, called the book architecture. This multidisciplinary and professional background are also features of contemporary illustration in books for children and young adults. So I decided to make an attempt at analyzing the factors which affect another golden period in the history of Polish illustration, which may be noticed today. So what is it that makes today's Polish illustrations not so different, so appealing? The first fact, and this will be a little bit of data, is, as we can learn from the data gathered by the Polish Book Institute, 180 publishers in Poland specializing in children's and young adult literature. Of course, we have to remember that the number of the publishers doesn't mean that their size is comparable or their offer, or it means that they produce only Polish books. When I say Polish books, I mean original creation, the text and the graphic layer of the books, as there are many licensed titles released, of course, by the publishers. This number is, of course, also the list that the register that was gathered by the Book Institute and some researchers as well. But of course, we can have the presumption that there are even more publishers who come with very important, beautiful projects, not being specialized in this area, or even, for example, not specializing in fiction. Like there are some galleries or some museums, other art centers who try to attract young audience to the institutions by publishing also special titles for them. So this number is, of course, a sort of approximately number of the publishers. As you probably know, among these are also the publishers that already gained word recognition, with Dwie Siostry publishers in the very first place, who won the Bologna Prize for the Best Children's Publisher in 2018. It is also worth mentioning that last year, Wytwórnia Publishing House was nominated for the same BOP prize in Bologna. Of 3,005 books for children and young adults, and this exact number you can see at the bottom of the slide, the source. There is annually published collection of data referring to publishing issues in Poland into sections for books and for periodicals, and the National Library in Warsaw is is behind this. So we are waiting at the moment for the newest publication concerning the year 2022. So of over 3,000 books, 1,637 were Polish original creation and production, which makes 61% of the total number. So we can imagine the quantity. Of course, it would be worth quite also important to compare these numbers with other countries. But I just thought that I do hope that the audience, the foreign audience we have, may be aware of these numbers in their own countries. But it's not that very important at the moment. It still means that the number of books is rather impressive. Another thing, another issue I would like to refer to is the fact that we have quite important and also with rich tradition book competitions, national book competitions. And of course, what I take into consideration is the competitions focusing on editorial features, so the graphic layer of the books. Some of them pay special attention, even in two categories, like for illustration and picture books or graphic design. But looking at them in details, I can also give some more information about their characters. So first of all, the Book of the Year contest, which is held by Polish section of EB every year at the end of the year in Warsaw. And this competition has naturally this section for literature. And you see the logos of the competition, which in Polish says that this is graphic award / picture book and / illustration. So this is probably the only competition, and definitely the only in Poland, of such a long tradition on one hand, and the importance on the other, that gives this two fields, which of course sometimes is problematic for the members of the jury. As I've had the pleasure of being a member of the jury and also the president of the jury in the past years, I can talk about it from my own experience, that sometimes it's really difficult to be very like straightforward or deciding whether this category is more applicable here or the other. And this is just to give you the idea, the covers of the awarded books. Normally there are about 12, 13 shortlisted books. So the nominations, there are so many covers because we have on the left side the literature category, but also with quite impressive covers. And on the right side, mainly books awarded in the graphic category. So there are altogether over 20. Then the awards, or this, in fact, are the awards with honorary mentions. And actually, this number is not the exact number every year. So it can happen that we have only 2 honorary mentions. In the other years, we can have 3 in each category. So this can vary. So this is the year 2021. And here are only graphic awards from the year 2020. And from the previous year, 2019, again, we've got the mixture of the awarded books in both literature and graphic category. Another important competition is the most beautiful books of the year, organized by Polish Association of the Publishers, also in Warsaw. The name even of the competition says that the jury evaluates the aesthetic qualities and level of publishing craft used in books which entered the competition. There are many categories. Only one of the whole competition is dedicated to books for children and young adults, but still it is also well recognized and cherished by the publishers. Wrocław has two competitions connected with the book fairs held every year at the beginning of December. So it's also a good moment of summing up the passing year. And the name of it is also the Publishers Award. And the one category is for the adults literature, and the other is for children. The name of this category is Good Pages, in Polish, Dobre Strony, so you can also see it on the logo. And another important competition is held every 2 years, this time at the Academy of Art and Design in Katowice, connected with it's not only a competition, but also a conference, exhibitions of masters of illustration, some workshops and meetings with graphic artists. And the title is Well-Designed Book. Let's start with children. Because of the pandemics, some of the competitions did have a short break, but actually, even on this online conditions, they could be continued. The break was in the case of Well-Designed Book in Katowice, but this year in May another edition will happen. This competition is especially important for the debutantes, for the young creators, as they can present their completely new projects. This is, of course, also a sort of trampoline for the future careers. Another issue which I find as a very important one, and this was also the case of the Polish School of Illustration in the past, is higher art education, well organized in Poland. As there are 8 art universities called traditionally in Poland as art academies, and 4 art institutes in structure of universities, with studios specializing in illustration, book design, editorial graphic design, or the situation in some of the academies is that they have all of these specializations. In some others, you may have only general graphic design, for example, but there are always some tasks and some students, of course, interested in particularly in book illustration. And this is just like a graphical map of these academies. So you can see the Art Academy in Warsaw, my original academy, the Eugeniusz Geppert in Wrocław. Then we have Art Academy in Łódź, Gdańsk, the oldest in Poland, Art Academy in Krakow, Katowice, the only actually University of Arts in Poznań, and the Art Academy in Szczecin. The only in this set which has music and fine arts in one institution. So probably the core of everything is the illustration itself. So what are the features of Polish illustration? And this is only a rough approach just to give the ideas what decides this quality. So impressive variety of artistic proposals, and I try to point out various styles, various manners and modes of expression, various inspiration sources, various artistic strategies and techniques. Then care for every single aspect of graphic design and graphic elements in a book. Illustrations, typography, accurate arrangement of pictures and spreads, layout, carefully considered book covers. Frequently present, as we cannot say that it always happens, care for book materiality. So sort of paper and its features like texture, thickness or color, cover features, and binding. Of course, you can presume that when I give these reasons and when I talk about these features, I think about well-designed books, beautiful books, not necessarily the books that won prizes, awards, and honorary mentions at the competitions home or abroad, but of course, books that present certain quality. So let's have a look at this richness and the variety and many various manners, styles, strategies, techniques, and so on and so forth. I will start with vintage aesthetics or new look again, as I called it, because in recent years it was quite visible. As I have really many examples to show you, I decided not to give too many data, only the name of the artist. From time to time, I will try to translate the titles of the books just to give you the idea. Like, for example, in this case, we have a book about fashion. The letters MODA, these are letters for Polish brands, heels, jeans, and sneakers. And of course, the Polish words create this word moda, which is fashion. Another book by Katarzyna Bogucka. If you don't see the name on the slide, it means that this is still the same name. There will be many of them, so I really just want to give you the impression of how many talented people work in this area. But of course, as far as I heard at the beginning, you will be able to come back to this presentation on YouTube channel. So this is only just this review, and I hope that I will manage to reach the end as we are at the beginning of the review. So this book by Katarzyna Bogucka is Walk, and it's actually without words, so you've got this visual narration, and the book is quite thick, so there are many stories, many situations that can happen during walks in the city. It's from another book based on old folk song, actually. So the idea to juxtapose the original old song known to many people with a very elegant, a bit Art Deco environment, and the elegant lady who doesn't want to cook lunch for her husband is a very humorous idea. And then the doll of Lolek, so Charlie, as we would say in English version. Scenes in kindergarten. Also, this time it is a book with text, but the images prevail. Gosia Herba, who is responsible for the illustrations, Mikołaj Pasiński works on graphic design of the books, which are quite often created by them also in the text layer. This is an award-winning Balloon Street #5. And some illustrations from the inside. You can recognize probably the elements of the interior, like furniture or ceramics, lighting system, typical for the new look style of the 1950s and early 60s. These are two different covers for one book only, situation that happen maybe not that very often because of the costs, of course, but the publishers like the possibility of choice for the audience, or even for the collectors who would like to have both versions. The inside of the book is exactly the same. This is a collection of poems by Jerzy Ficowski. And a typical silhouette of a child, geometrical shapes, the rhythm of lines. These are the qualities resembling also the fashion, the costumes of those days, and design, general design in all aspects of everyday life and people's surrounding. Paweł Mildner, like Gosia Herba and Mikołaj Pasiński, he is from Wrocław, my hometown, and he specializes in books for younger children. So this is his original concept, ice cream in all flavors. And some illustrations from the inside of the book. And a very recent proposal for the kindergarten children, so-called contrast books for the youngest, washing on the left side and walk on the right side. And another original concept of his, with very short lines of text, and the title was, "It's Interesting What the Queen Will Think of It." Adam Pękalski, and two covers of the books that show his aching to vintage aesthetics, to new look style as well. Practical Gentleman on the left side, and Frania, which is not only a lady's name in Poland, but also the brand of washing machine from the 1950s and 60s. So again, we have this sentimental journey to the past, and as you can see, the furniture, the interior is filled with modernist furniture, and also the style of clothing of the main protagonist suits the new look aesthetics perfectly. But to be honest, it's nothing new, as this manner, this style, was obviously used in the decades of the late 50s and 60s. So now we have the examples from the past. Hanna Czajkowska, famous Polish illustrator who specialized, for example, in Swedish literature. So the best known releases of Astrid Lindgren's books in Poland were drawn by her. Juliusz Makowski, and the books from the early 60s. Zdzisław Witwicki, and also his famous collections of fairy tales from faraway countries, or fables about princesses and knights on horses or on donkeys. So everything is there as it should be in classical literature for children. Another tendency I called expressive drawing and painting, which is also visible in Polish books. So wild, purely expressionist style is represented in Anna Kazimierak's proposals, and the cover of the book dedicated to folk habits, folk festivities, was the book of the year in 2020. This book was also thought as a sort of activity book, because you can feel some of the spread some of the drawings with your own ideas. So you've got some simple instructions like turn it upside down, and then you can have another creature, try to make your own as well. Or you can complete the pictures like here. You can also write the new dates for the coming years. So it also invites young audience to co-create the book. Anna Kazimierak is also the author of minimalistic illustrations for the books about Vietnam from the Two Sisters Publishing House, Dwie Siostry, from the series about the word. Each is dedicated to another country. Gosia Kulik also gained award in Bologna for this book, How to Deal with the Contemporary Theatre would be a rough translation of this title. And as you can see, I especially chose the double spread dedicated to Expressionism, as we have this double meaning of Expressionism here. But I think it's easily seen that the line at the moment, even we can treat it as an ugly line, but ugly, of course, in this meaning of roughness and sort of wild, not very timid line. Dominika Czerniak-Chojnacka is another representative of young generation of illustrators, and in the category of toddlers, she was also awarded in Bologna for the book about the chimney sweep and the baker. One of her latest designs was original concept for the orchestra, which is a leporella, actually. This is an illustration from another book about a sort of diary of a mother and a son who has his very individual way of perceiving the world, and the sensitivity Dominika created the illustration for this book also brought the book and Olga Ptak, the author of it, many awards. And the winner of 2 competitions for the last year, one of her recent set of illustration to the book 2 Words, about man and the God and their philosophical discussions and walks through the word. Agata Królak, who is associated with Gdańsk Academy of Art, as Dominika with Poznań University of Fine Arts, also come up with the books for the youngest audience. This is about verse and professions. This is about opposites. We have a clean burr and the dirty one, a thin and a thick one, but also activity books, this time connected with the house surroundings. So, for example, you can equip the kitchen with your own ideas. Another book by Agata Królak is about Theo, also a very sensitive boy. And again, back to the 60s and late 50s. The master of illustration, a professor of many generations of illustrators at the Warsaw Academy, Janusz Stanne, from his original book. Henryk Tomaszewski, a master of poster, also known for some released titles for the younger audience, the collection of poems. Another category will be silenced tones of pencils. And here you probably will be aware of the creators. Iwona Chmielewska, one of the best recognized Polish illustrator, also very well known in South Korea and Germany. The book about war, about ghetto. So the title is Mommy Always Comes Back. The collection of poems by Krystyna Miłobęcka, On the High Mountain. Another name in this category is Joanna Koncecho, very well known for the common project with Nobel Prize winner Olga Tokarczuk, The Lost Soul, with many translations abroad, with the examples from this book, but also her original picture book called, it should be translated S is for C. In Polish, it's the letter M. As Morze, the word C begins with the letter M. And this is the newest title, with the premiere only in January. Mr. Clear, we would translate it with the text by Olga Tokarczuk again. Aleksandra Zając, and a funny but also thought-provoking book about the emotions. What do emotions do is the title. Ewa Beniak-Haremska illustrated the book entitled Letters to A, with the subtitle Alzheimer Lives with Us. So this subtitle reveal the actual issues the author Anna Sakowicz refers to in the book. And again, back to the past, Stasys Eidrigevičius, early 80s, one of the colored pencil drawing by his, and a bit later book to the text by Joanna Papuzińska, A Story. There are also many purely painterly proposals among Polish illustrations. Elżbieta Wasiuczyńska is the next author, and some examples from her works. Especially recently, she came with sets of illustrations to books about animals, about little birds or little wolves. So we can see some of them. Emilia Dziubak is also quite well known abroad, thanks to cooperation with Widmark. And here is an example of Madlena Szeliga's horror, wonderful book that refers to old painters, to Baroque style with its dark tones. And the idea for the whole book are the sufferings of vegetables and the cases, because even all chapters are entitled The Case of Beetroot, for example, in this example. And we can also imagine the case of apple and the case of pea. Some other examples from Emilia Dziubak's oeuvre about books by Barbara Kosmowska about a little hare named True. So I do hope that you can see the similarities to some old paintings, and also awarded title by Helena Stiasny with pseudonym Bancroft. This was a diary written on the 1st of September 1939. So here we see the tradition of colorism, very important in Polish painting throughout the turn of the 19th century and throughout the whole 20th century. And again, back to the past, Janusz Grabiański, a wonderful animalist, painter, of course, not only of animals, but he was probably the best known for it, just like Józef Wilkoń. And Antoni Boratyński, who was perfectly recognized as an illustrator of fairy tales. And Bożena Truchanowska, just to give some other names and to show different styles, but of painterly qualities. Inspirations with folklore are still present in Polish illustration as they were in the period of Polish School of Illustration. The first name is Marianna Oklejak, and her original concept of the book presenting not only original patterns, because this double spread perfectly shows the juxtaposition of the original ornament deriving from various regions of Poland with her own artistic creation. The second volume of the book was a continuation of this idea with some more compositions and also proposals for children to play. Gabriela Gorączko, a graduate from Wrocław Academy, also shows the possibilities of using the folk ornament in telling the universal stories. And again, the past, Adam Kilian, inspired by painting on glass, or Zbigniew Rychlicki, who came up with a wonderful mixture of psychedelic qualities with Polish folklore of the central region. in some way, the power of handcrafts is associated with folklore, but not necessarily. So here we have the embroidered illustrations for the book about a stork, a popular bird in Poland. Here we have Elżbieta Wasiuczyńska, again, this time the collection of poems about cats. And textile collages by Ewa Kozyra-Pawlak, sometimes also helped by Paweł Pawlak in collages, but of course this set of books about animals is a combination of watercolors, original photographs, and textile collages executed by Ewa. This is from a book about a cat called Bobik and about the raccoon family. Józef Wilkoń, who was already presented in another section, is a talented sculptor himself. So the sculptures of dogs, for example, became the elements, visual elements of his book about dogs' life. Collage and photomontage are still present, and we can say that from the very early of the 20th century, and the examples of Ola Cieślak, Marta Ignerska, Paweł Pawlak, this time in another category, or very recent Anna Kaźmierak, the name that we already saw today. And again, the past, Bogdan Butenko or Stanisław Zamecznik. And something that is universal, definitely we can find the examples of using cartoons and comic styles everywhere in the world, and the Mizielińskis are probably the best recognized for it, also because of the international awards. So the books about wildlife parks, their newest release about wolves. And the book of the year by Jacek Ambrożewski, The History of Aviation. Adam Wójcicki drawn the history and contemporariness of the handbag. Magdalena Wosik, also connected with Wrocław Academy, illustrates teenagers' novels. And Nikola Kucharska specializes in informative books about everything, I would risk to say. Janek Koza prepared a book that is definitely for the older young audience about life with the little children at home. And the stories of socks are very popular in Poland, as the 5th volume is now released by Justyna Bednarek and Daniel de la Tour. And again, the past, Bogdan Butenko, comic and photomontage all together in the series about a scout Kwapiszon. Mieczysław Piotrowski and his original concept of the book Gray Ear, about a bunny with this bubble speech. Is this a picture story? Kazimierz Mikulski and stories about an elegant dog called Ferdinand the Great. Mirosław Pokora. And Gwidon Miklaszewski, who illustrated very popular teenager novels in the past decades. There are, of course, always individual proposals, and I would only like to show you Maria Strelaskas' books, because she won with the stories about the Basket Mountains, the Book of the Year in 2022, and 2 years earlier for the Basket Mountains in the summer. This is her proposal, originally executed in woodcut technique, the Basket Mountains in winter. She also came with a book about Nikifor, a naive painter living in the mountains in the south part of Poland. So as you can see, this can be really, really different, and I do hope that appealing. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Anita, for such wonderful and inspiring talk, and for showing us so many different wonderful Polish illustrated books. Now we have some time for questions, for some comments. So please.
Perhaps there were too many.
You can use the chat, you can raise your digital hand, as it was said in the beginning. So okay, so maybe I'll start, because you showed us a lot of allusions, a lot of references of contemporary illustrations, and many references to masters of Polish illustrations from the past. And I am wondering if you find something that surprises you, something new, something fresh, also on our Polish book market, or only some allusions, some references, some imitations, maybe I can say, of the big masters of Polish illustration.
I would say that I really do appreciate the contemporary illustration as well, and I dare to say that it is another golden period of Polish illustration, to be sure. So on the one hand, we can risk and say that there are great new talents again, and I didn't want to say that they repeat something or they imitate, because now, especially, what is probably the biggest difference now is the use of digital techniques, so the computer design and possibilities it gives. On the other hand, we can say that the more we appreciate the handcraft, like in the example of Eva and Paweł Pawlak, when you can see that they were originally cut out the pieces of the textile, or you can see the trace of the paintbrush, or even the line of the pencil. But on the other hand, we know that nowadays the technique is developed so much that even the tablets, they can give this impression of the original tool. Let's call it an original tool. What I want to present here, and that's why I allow myself to use this not so different in the title of the presentation, that unfortunately for young illustrators, we can say that everything was in fine arts in some way, because the ideas, like for example of the Temersons, as early as in the 1930s, and later on when they moved to England and continued the work on books. Then the 50s and the 60s, the experiments, the mixture of the language used in posters or in any other fields that I was talking about at the beginning, they allowed artists to come with really original, bold in the concepts and the ideas, illustration. And it really is difficult now to come with totally new idea, because perhaps some formats or the electronic books we can have, right, or some things like this, but in a very design, this can be the dialogue with the past, which is so versatile and so rich. So, well, I don't see it as a disadvantage, but it really is hard to say that something is really surprising or a very, very novel.
They are lucky because of technology, and especially in Poland, that of the quality of their releases of the work is much higher than of the masters from the past. We have one question in our chat, and the comment with a question: the artistry in the books you showed is so free and non-commercial. Are you experiencing any censorship of the new titles?
Well, if we talk about censorship, it will definitely refer to the text and the issues that can be included in the books. There are some topics which are not necessarily supported by the government in Poland, and of course we can imagine that they won't be financed by Ministry of Culture and National Heritage, for example. But it doesn't mean that they won't be published in Poland, as we have independent publishers, and actually they can release whatever they want and whatever subject they want. The tradition, the long tradition of Polish illustration, and as I said, this avant-garde illustration and allowance from art directors in big publishing houses made the audience in Poland accustomed to this sort of illustration. What doesn't mean that everybody is interested in such high artistic quality, right? There are still lots and lots of people who prefer the mainstream and universal, right, or global solutions, or easy graphic design.
I think it's everywhere in the world. So not only in Poland, but it's improving last years, I think so. Mateusz has a question.
Or a comment.
Of course I do. Thank you for your wonderful talk. Listening to you is always a great pleasure.
Thank you.
I have a question connected to the reception of Polish illustrations abroad. are Polish illustrations appealing to international readers? Which illustrators are the most popular abroad and why? Because you've mentioned a few people, so I'm pretty sure that this may be interesting, to our international listeners, our international viewers.
I cannot give you the numbers, and I don't think that the data is that much important at the moment, but I would say that the biggest number of titles released abroad is till today, I think, the absolute leader is Iwona Chmielewska, and her phenomenon, especially in South Korea, but also, as I said, in Germany, and nowadays in more and more countries. That we can risk that she's probably mostly recognized nowadays. This was the case of Józef Wilkoń at some time, and Janusz Grabiański, who at the turn of the 1960s was very successful in the USA and Austria, for example. So, but probably we are not talking about the past at the moment. So thanks to Nasza Księgarnia Publishing House, I received some time ago a list, and the number of licenses sold to other countries is really impressive. The books by Pawlaks, the books by Nikola Kucharska, for example, these are quite popular. But another phenomenon, I would say, is, of course, the duo of Aleksandra and Daniel Mizielińskis, and the success of the maps, their original book, which is today, I think, translated into 38 languages, as far as I remember. And it is really everywhere, not only the book about maps, but till today it's really the success. I didn't show Piotr Socha in this selection, and I didn't show many other wonderful artists, of course, but his books on bees and trees, and the newest one about dirt, and all the books, even the one about dirt, they are so delicious, visually delicious, that they are also very popular. And Joanna Concejo, who actually lives and works in France, she has also many titles released in Spain, Italy, France. And now, thanks to collaboration with Olga Tokarczuk, and this we can say is like also the attractive part of it, because Tokarczuk is recognized as the Nobel Prize winner, and the new title, as far as I know, is already sold to other countries as well. So these are definitely not all the names. Gosia Herba, the next really very popular name, because she also designs book covers and press illustrations. So she's known from different areas of graphic activity.
Yes, and since 2008, I think that's the proof of what you said is the rising number of Bologna Ragazzi Award for Polish books. Almost every year, the books are awarded or mentioned for illustration. Jan Bajtlik is also a good example of international career, and his books are also published around the world. And you are jury member or a president of a jury in many contests. You showed us so many beautiful illustrations, so many beautiful illustrated books for children. And I'm wondering that it must be a nightmare for a jury to choose the one or a few of them only that can be awarded. So how it works? How do you do this? It must be a really hard job.
Well, in the very first place, it's a very pleasant job. It's wonderful to have all these beautiful books around in one place, and the possibility of seeing some of them even for the first time, especially if the publishing houses or the centers, the cultural centers, are not that very widely distributed, or simply these are occasional projects sometimes. So it's a huge pleasure. But of course, the task is difficult. The good thing is that you never do this individually. So the responsibility of the selections and choices is spread on at least 3 people, sometimes even more. And the discussions and reasons why this is better, because you have only a limited number of the awards. That's why we think that it is so important for Polish books that we have this long short list of, let's say, 10 or 12 or 13 titles, but not in all the competitions, obviously. And on the other hand, we also try to create the list B, so-called, and then we have no limits at all. And this is also a sort of good idea, because we can still promote in some way the books that were not so perfect, let's say. Of course, we are trying to find the titles that propose something new, something original, although it is so difficult, as I said before. Sometimes we also try to follow the artistic career of an artist, because what we really appreciate is when you can see another face, artistic face of a known name, as the case of Paweł Pawlak, for example, who uses to say that he gets bored with some techniques. So after some time, he has to do something else. And this is really a wonderful challenge for him, but also for the audience. So yes, definitely we try to find something new, something original, which can be sometimes something very traditional, on the contrary, right? Because like Maria Strelaskas, the last book, which is absolutely going back to the past, because it looks like from the beginning of the 20th century. And if you know that these are the original woodcut prints, this is really amazing, especially in the age of new technologies, right? So yes, we're looking for pearls.
And you find them. That's true. And Mateusz put some message in the chat that Gosia Herba's book on Balonowa Street 5 was included on the IB honor list of 2022. Thank you, Mateusz, for this. And there is a link if you want to read something more about this. So please.
Yeah. Ella, you said about the Bologna Award, which is like, of course, the most recognizable prize, but we have to remember about the White Ravens list.
Yes, of course.
And this is also an important list and register of important, valuable books, and Polish titles are also there regularly.
Yes, of course. But Bologna focus only on the illustration and the artistic part, artistic side of the books. Okay, so I can't see any more comments or questions in the chat. The last chance for asking our guests about anything connected to illustration and book art. If you don't have any more questions, so okay. Mr. Jakub Chudy, okay.
Hello, yes. I have one probably very big question in the dawn of AI art. How do you think would this new tools, new possibilities, and probably dangers have effect on new and future illustrated books for children and everyone else?
Thank you for the question. Well, what I can say from the from the experience and from my observations of book illustration, not only in Poland, although mainly, of course, here, the absolute advantage and absolute positive side for artists, perhaps mainly, is the time. So the possibility of making corrections, the possibility of recreating or repeating some motifs that are possible nowadays, or using the ready fonts, for example, if we want to use the typography as a part of book design. It is something really absolutely, I think the artists today would never like to give it up, never would like to resign of it. As probably some of you know, the old masters in the period of Polish School of Illustration, they create typography by hand only. Janusz Stanley, when he wanted to play with the letters, he just simply wrote all these letters with his hands and came up with some ideas. So definitely time and the possibility of using the ready motifs and the easiness of this. So in effect, it will be the possibility of creating more books and more interesting design.
But my question was about AI generated art, like in
AI generated.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, because I thought that we are talking about new technologies like the. Okay, so I heard about one design, one project that was created by AI, and but I cannot. I haven't seen it in details, and I cannot praise it in any way. Although I can imagine that following the instructions and mixing the styles, the manners I showed you today during the lecture would be also interesting, even for some creative process researchers. But still, what I think is the most important for the audience and for the professionals, but also for amateurs, just simply for the readers, like for children, for example. this wouldn't be that much important who is behind it if the picture is attractive, if it's constructed in a particular way. We can imagine a book based just simply on plain, colorful pages. But here I think that the complexity of this design is to some extent limited. And what comes from the original creation of people, well, I would like to believe in this, is not to be exceeded in a short distance of time. I do hope, at least. I mean, I'm a bit afraid of AI, so probably that's why
same here. So, very thank you for answer.
Thank you very much for the question.
I think that we all are afraid of AI, the influence on our life. So let's hope it wouldn't replace us all very, very fast. Okay, so I'm checking the chat. And I can't see any questions, only another comment from Mateusz about Tina Oziewicz book. Tina Oziewicz and Aleksandra Zając book that was included on the Outstanding International Books list issued by the United States Boards on Books for Young People. So it's also very, very, very good to know. Very nice. Thank you, Mateusz, for this information. Maybe we have a question or comment from the audience. Maybe someone who wants to ask in person. No. Okay, so I think that we can...
The audience is tired after everything.
Very late at night after the holiday, of course, but thank you for being with us today. And thank you, Anita, of course, for your wonderful lecture.